Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Monday, February 19th. Now Wednesday and Friday I may be streaming at wildly different times, either very early or very late, even wildly different times than usual. And if something goes wrong in today's stream, I'm gonna probably blame it on an experiment I'm doing here, which is to have a second version of OBS running, capturing the first version of OBS, using the first version of OBS as a virtual webcam, effectively. I was thinking that this might lead to a way in which the YouTube Shorts could be made as I'm live streaming, overlap the production there. That literally would mean that two versions of OBS were running, and at times two versions of OBS would be recording video to the same hard drive at the same time, using the same video card, using the same CPU, same RAM, everything, which could be asking quite a lot, frankly, like, depending on how it works. The trick there would be for your first version of OBS to have a very high resolution that added to the 1080p resolution you'd normally have, or I'd normally have, and then the second version would crop and frame whatever extra pixels outside of that 1080p into making it would crop out the extra 1080p, and then the second version would be doing the streaming, and you'd still see what you normally see during a live stream, and then there would just be something probably to the right of that in the first version that you wouldn't be seeing, and then that would be recording at a higher resolution, and then I'd have to use some trickery with FFmpeg, which isn't a big deal, to crop out the video and just remove the first monitor's 1080p footage to get what was on the second monitor's image. Inherently, it's a very interesting idea and experiment. It could be very demanding, but I don't think it actually would be applicable to what I would want to do as far as making YouTube Shorts, because you inherently run into this problem where I would really need to rewrite my macro as far as how to trigger YouTube Shorts to start recording and start the music in a way that it could make just one long cue and buffer it and then process all the buffer, where I really can't do that because I can't trigger the advanced scene switcher macros to work with the UI vision macros that way. Like, what triggers it to start is when the file exists. So if the file always exists and it just has a long list of things, lines that it has to process, that's going to take some reprogramming, and I'm not sure I can really do that. But the more practical problem is that it takes a minute to make a YouTube short. There's just no way of speeding that process up other than to potentially record at some kind of ridiculously high frame rate, and even that really wouldn't work as well. It would change what the actual footage was if I just slowed down the video by half and recorded really only 30 seconds of it. And so inherently, all the other technical hurdles being ignored, I would still have to spend a minute extra for every extra video that went over the stream. So if this was a 3-hour stream and an hour in I started to make YouTube Shorts. I can only make 60 YouTube Shorts. Really. Maybe 120 per day. And there are definitely times where there are more games that deserve YouTube Shorts than 60 or 120 of them. And so then it would just make the live streams awkwardly long. So for the reason I was thinking, it wouldn't work. But it is an interesting thought, and maybe there is something I can think of in the future, so I do want to learn about it. Now, having two versions of OBS, and I know this has nothing to do with Yu-Gi-Oh! Or video games, so apologies if you don't care about the nerd talk. I'll finish quickly here. Having two versions of OBS, though, also runs into a weird situation where I would have to program the second version of OBS to handle all the audio, because the first version of OBS, if it was going to make the YouTube Shorts, would be playing completely different audio. That is doable, but it does create this weird situation in which you're going to just have to have two versions of OBS doing a lot of things in parallel. So for that reason, I don't think it works. What might work at some point, and I think this is probably the wiser thing to do, would be to try and multi-stream your videos to both YouTube and Twitch at the same time, which I'm pretty sure Twitch has a term of service requirement that not be the case. YouTube may have the same thing, that you can't stream them at the exact same time. You might, and ignoring both of them is probably going to cause more trouble than it's worth. There are definitely websites that let you just stream to multiple sites at the same time, and terms of service be damned. At least there used to be websites like that. I haven't looked lately. You could also, now that YouTube has vertical live streaming, you could consider swapping out one version that is widescreen with also having a version that is live that is in portrait mode, and more vertical. For Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, that doesn't make a lot of sense. No, it really wouldn't. You could also potentially, if my hardware could handle streaming or recording at once, two at once, you could have a version that, say, had just Yu-Gi-Oh! Footage going and didn't show any of the news, or a version that just showed the news. That would inherently require that something was happening during the Yu-Gi-Oh! And news on the other screens, and that's just not the case, and it almost certainly would never be the case, because I'm only one person who can only really focus on one thing at a time, like every other human who really can only focus on one thing at a time. You could possibly get a clean version of it that doesn't have like the text scrolls at the top, but there's nothing to see what the text scrolls are. If there was a place where I could talk about adult games, and then there could be a censored version and an uncensored version, but there is no place to upload an uncensored version, really, and YouTube doesn't even want me really talking about adult games. So yeah, it's an interesting thought. Technically, it's a thought, though, at the moment that doesn't have a need. So I found a nail, and now I need to find a board that is loose to nail down that nail. Potentially I found the nail. As far as the accountability section, let's see. We've got some new accessories, which the art on this looks fairly different. Like, if you told me this was like some kind of Digimon art, I would believe you. Or even like Pokemon art, I'd believe you. Before Yu-Gi-Oh! Then this character art style looks fairly off from what you normally see as a Yu-Gi-Oh! Character. I finished cracking the cryptic, and yeah, that was a lot of time to prove that I just don't have time or skill to do Sudoku instead of Yu-Gi-Oh! What occurred to me, though, in this process of covering the many flaws, the biggest ones being that there's just a lot of typos in the handwritten hints to the puzzles in cracking the cryptic, which is just completely unacceptable. But yeah, the interface is rough, and even though cracking the cryptic has variants on Sudoku, they are still very much just pen and paper variants on Sudoku. There's nothing special happening in the cracking the cryptic app that could not just be happening on pen and paper. And yeah, the other major complaint certainly to make is that there's just a very poor sample pack that they give for free in cracking the cryptic as a free to start game, and they don't give sample packs for a lot of the DLC when they should give at least like 3 puzzles in each of the DLC. One easy, one medium, one hard would be my thought there. They do that with the Dominoes DLC, but they don't do it with any of the other DLCs. But yeah, overall, you run into major problems of there being just far too difficult puzzles. I really shouldn't open anything here. And honestly, this wouldn't really be the biggest or best candidate. Where's our legacy packs? Let's open 10 of those instead. But yeah, what did occur to me is that there probably is several tricks you could do to twist the base concept of Sudoku into being something easier at the beginning, or something that just really encourages you to possibly only play until the first failure to start with. And when I started to think on those terms, honestly, like a roguelite game, L-I-G-H-T, I mean, no, it's actually L-I-T-E, is how they spell light. Yeah. A roguelite game around Sudoku might be really cool if you put a lot of polish into it. Although inherently you may be putting a lot of polish into it for a very small audience that actually may very likely be in more of the terms of cracking the cryptic, in which they want super difficult puzzles and they don't really care about easy puzzles or being welcoming in general to new players. And yeah, I could definitely see that would be the case. That it is just a very insulated, very gatekeeper, a very high-minded group of people that do Sudokus. And you see that in the fact that when I look at like kids' activity books, or the last time I looked at kids' activity books, I really didn't see any Sudokus in it. whereas you definitely have other kinds of things like crosswords and connect the dots, all at very simplistic and easy levels. Maybe there really is just not any room for easier Sudokus anyways. But it would definitely be helpful if the Sudoku community found a way to make easier Sudokus for even little kids to get into it. But yeah, if you made a roguelite Sudoku game where it was one hit kill effectively, the first time you make a mistake you lose, and then there was a timer at the top and you had, let's say, to start with 10 minutes to solve a Sudoku. Some even shorter, potentially. And so then you're given a relatively simplistic Sudoku that would just be a classic Sudoku without any variant in it, and you would try to solve it as much as you can solve it. You get, say, 1 gold coin for every correct digit you solve, and you get like 1 gold coin for every 10 seconds you have if you've solved the entire Sudoku. You either run out of time the first time you run through this roguelite Sudoku concept, you'll either run out of time, or you'll make a mistake and you'll die in the one-hit kill, or if you're really good you'll finish it and get a massive start as a bonus. Regardless, that puzzle ends, and then you take your coins and you're given taken to a shop, and in the shop you can buy more time. So the next puzzle you start with, instead of 10 minutes, you start with like 15 minutes or 11 minutes. You'd probably go up in like 30 seconds or 1 minute increments. You could buy for a fairly high price a second heart, which would be a 2-hit kill at that point, and you could buy like more starting numbers already filled in to make the puzzles easier if you so choose. And some of these would like be permanent upgrades. More starting numbers for the next puzzle probably would be just for the exact next puzzle. And then, because it's a video game in Sudoku, you would want to have potentially some automations. And one of the automations you can do pretty obviously with Sudoku is that if you pencil mark that only 2 numbers can be in a place, and then you happen to mark that one of those 2 numbers is already in the same row or column or box, well then automatically a video game with Sudoku will, almost all of them will, eliminate the pencil mark of the one it could no longer be. So, in a roguelike concept like that, you could have a chaining system, and with that chaining system you can have it automatically fill, and just automatically fill in places where there is proven to only be one last option. Let's see now, what can we summon? Do we have anything here that has a significant amount of attack? Like, almost none of these cards have anything other than 1 stars. This is really getting me nowhere. So yeah, inherently, that was just the thought I had while I was playing Cracking the Cryptic, is that if I had a team of programmers and the funding, I think we could make a game like that and put it on Steam, and still might run into some major problems in that it would just be a Steam Direct game thrown out there. You really would need somebody like, I think, Devolver Digital or some other publisher to really fund the advertisement on it. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm supposed to be really doing here. But yeah, the idea of a roguelike around Sudoku is about the only thing I think you could do with Sudoku to try and make it somewhat more possible. It'd be kind of weird if you were playing something like Deus Ex and then you had to solve Sudokus to hack the computers, because Sudokus are just too long, particularly if you're not good at them. Like it was taking me anywhere between 80 for a very easy, 80 minutes for a very easy Sudoku to 220 minutes for very difficult Sudokus. One of the things I did notice on the last couple of sample Sudoku puzzles I did is that I was just making constant progress for 45 minutes or so, to 60 minutes on a couple puzzles. And that's definitely what I would have wanted to have happen with all the puzzles, instead of just hitting major speed bumps and just being confused and eventually just having to give up and use the hint systems, which then became nightmares on themselves for just not being helpful, since they're full of typos. Full is, I think, the right term to use. But yeah, I don't think as a hacking minigame, which is the only way I could see Sudoku also being part of a bigger game for it to work. So then you would want to just make a variant, something that is still Sudoku but puts more video game elements into it. And that's not really what Cracking the Cryptic was trying to be. Anyways, Cracking the Cryptic really is just trying to be a Sudoku game. And so if I was really just going to make a Sudoku interface like Cracking the Cryptic, or if I was just going to improve Cracking the Cryptic, I would just hire somebody to double, triple check all the hints. First of all, I would make a lot more puzzles. I would have a custom puzzle generating mode, since it's obvious that Cracking the Cryptic's YouTube page gets submissions from people from their website making custom hand-built puzzles. Why is there not a functionality like that in the Cracking the Cryptic game on Steam? Maybe you change the name too. Maybe it's a little confusing to call the game Cracking the Cryptic and the YouTube channel Cracking the Cryptic, particularly when you when Studio Goya has several other Sudoku apps that are just called like classic Sudoku, and I guess that's probably why it does make some sense to call it Cracking the Cryptic, is because they already have several apps just called like classic Sudoku, killer Sudoku, each app focused on a single variant of Sudoku. It's crazy that those apps are still available though, and that they weren't just integrated as DLC, or at least, even if you don't take them off from sale, integrate them as DLC anyways into one app. There are a lot of things that are just missing as far as features that still could have been added to Cracking the Cryptic to make it a little bit easier. Which of these cards possibly can do something? From the graveyard. Not sure any of these cards can do anything from the graveyard. Yeah, there's literally no card in here that benefits from being in a graveyard. So why do I even have that card? Unless there's something I'm just missing. Maybe, does this bring... No, it doesn't do anything. Well, I'm confused. Almost certainly this is going to be the last game I'll play with this deck, and then I'll just go back to Harpy's Ladies. Harpy's Ladies I understood well enough. So I suppose I'm in a little bit of a weird position. I still have scheduling and uploads and things to do, so I can focus on that, but fairly quickly I'm either going to have to get back to working on my small van air sign, which doesn't seem likely, even though I do have a bit of a twinge that I want to do some kind of project. I just also have like no idea around it, and yet I still don't really want to do the obvious choice there, which would be to finish a project that could actually be sold, and take the next steps to list it and do all of that. But possibly due to just a mental hang-up and fear of failure. Otherwise, it's just straight up stupidity and laziness. So if I'm not going to do that, then I'll just need to start playing a different game. I definitely am not going to play anything super heavy puzzle related or Sudoku related. Almost certainly I would like to probably play something that is just a good, dumb, fun shooter. They were giving away Dead Island Riptide for free, so I could play that, but that would be a kind of silly decision for a couple of reasons. One, I believe Dead Island Riptide was the worst version of Dead Island Definitive Edition, or the original Dead Island, assuming Riptide even is just Dead Island 1 once again being repackaged. Instead, it would make a lot more sense to play Dying Light, which I do believe I have that. Dying Light 1. Now the problem here, playing just 2 games on this deck, is it is very possible that I've just been wrecked by people who are yeah, I could have just been wrecked by people who are doing really good jobs of doing these sushi shows. Let's see what this effect. So I could tribute something to summon something else. Let's see if that works. Well, that was dumb. Maybe you're supposed to summon something like this. And then, does that get us any further? Piercing damage, target spells, spell or trap card. Increase something by 1 level per turn. See, and yeah, this just doesn't get us anywhere. Let's toss this. And then just increase this by 1 level. And it still doesn't really let you do anything, so best case scenario would be something like that. And that still gets us absolutely nowhere. We can't attack and we're just gonna lose. So, yeah, I guess we should probably cover one bit of news just as your YouTube news. The former CEO of Susan Wojcicki, who I definitely felt like wasn't doing a particularly good job as being CEO of YouTube, and definitely felt like she was just trying to rub elbows with celebrities. Well, either her son or grandson, who's not a celebrity and really doesn't deserve any special criticism or commentary, seem to have passed away, and yeah, that's pretty much all to say around that, I guess. It's not really that newsworthy to say the former CEO of YouTube's son or grandson, I couldn't even get that straight, died. People die all the time, but also it's not in any way appropriate to like dance on the grave of somebody or try and troll something. In fact, there's really no reason to ever think of or mention Susan Wojcicki again unless she comes back to YouTube. There's also an argument here that maybe I don't need to even really play that much more of this, and I could just go back to ranked. But yeah, I guess it's worth pointing it out here. This is where I can only make an appeal to humanity's better nature to not joke or troll. Hashtag too soon type thought, and just not good comedy in general to punch down like that. In the same it would be the exact same case if it was Susan Wojcicki who passed away herself. But at the very least, if it was Susan Wojcicki herself, I suppose there might be room for a joke at some point that she was kicked out of Life's Youth Partner Program or something like that, which, in fairness, a lot of content creators have been mistreated and exploited. Almost all the content creators have been exploited by YouTube, so I could see anger towards Susan Wojcicki as being the head of a system that's been designed to exploit content creators. But yeah, family members in general should be off topic. And for the longest time, it was always the case that family members were a no-go zone. Wasn't until like I suppose it would have been George Bush Jr. would have been about the time when politics started to really focus in on mudslinging about what the Bush daughters, I believe, were doing or saying. And then there was a lot of news coverage around like Barack Obama's daughters, even though they tried to keep it mostly quiet. And now certainly there was tons of news reporting in politics around Trump and Biden's family, sons and daughters. So we could get a Dark Magician, but this is a Harpy Ladies deck, so see what we can do here against a Dark Magician. Actually isn't Dark Magician. It's Dark Magician the Dragon Knight. Yeah, I don't think it makes sense to actually special summon anything other than my own cards, though, since if I have any hope at all of winning here, it's gonna have to be a synergy. So I guess that means we should probably just start covering video game news at this point. I hadn't realized really this is already here. We're already 40 minutes into this. I pretty obviously don't know the full strategies here, though. This alluring mirror split would be nice. Really need this, though. But I can't activate this. So I guess maybe you try to do this. Seriously? This is gonna suck. This is gonna suck real bad. Yeah, can't do anything. I literally can't do anything here. I played a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh! Off screen, and so I've already gotten the card back, which is the big thing for Yu-Gi-Oh! So I wouldn't be super opposed to kind of just stopping after one or two more games here, and even stopping somewhat early. Okay, so Video Games Chronicles has announced a new complete Fallout collection coming in a mini nuke storage case. It's available for pre-order ahead of the Fallout TV, well, ahead of its release in April, but it's in collaboration with the Fallout TV series in part. So the weirdness here is that you have like Fallout 1, Fallout 2, Fallout Tactics, which are not really made by Bethesda, Fallout 3, which was made by Bethesda, but maybe it's not the same Bethesda that made Fallout 76, and Fallout 4, which is here. And then you have Fallout New Vegas that was not made by Bethesda. So of the potential 7 games here, there's literally only 3 of them that have been made by Bethesda, and 2 of them not particularly that well received. Fallout New Vegas, particularly way more received. The other weird thing about this mini nuke gadget, which might be an interesting little gadget here, is it seems really like you're just getting these special stat cards, like they're just pencil board card mini posters, and the nuke, because I'm pretty sure they are not selling any of these in a physical version. You could sell them in a digital version, but inherently, what are you really getting from that digital version? From a physical version, you'd just be getting like a CD-ROM, with a lot of people not even putting CD-ROMs into their computers and their builds. Yeah, the more I think about it, there's not anybody that I've seen that has actually made a PC recently that has a computer build. Probably should have done that a long time ago to do this. Yeah, if we look at the actual website here, let's see if we can find out what they're really promising. Each special card is printed with a PC game code for one of the 7 landmark Fallout games, including this. Okay, so each card on the back of it is a code. There is no disc, there's no USB drive, which, yeah, USB thumbsticks, not really cheap enough to replace CD-ROMs. It is kind of sad that we haven't found the technology that would have enough space, but would be like a one-time write flash memory. What that really would be just like an EEPROM that you could write once and not rewrite on it. But yeah, we're not. The only thing we could really have happen is you would have to have just like a very high number of failing flash sticks, the giant size flash sticks that only work on the writes once and can't be repaired in any way. And it just doesn't seem like that's really the case at all. The smarter move would be to introduce some burnable 4K UHD 25 plus layer Blu-ray type disc that could be used as backups. That would potentially convince me to buy a drive like that. I could do a much better job of backing up if, like, I'm not doing any kind of job of backing up my data at the moment. But even that would be very much contingent on being able to even write to a giant size disk that would have to be somewhere around 8 terabytes minimum size. How long would it really take to burn an 8 terabyte disk? Yeah. And what happens if the burn fails like an hour into the process? Weirdly, on this Fallout anthology, which I just don't see a lot of people not having any of these games and being interested in any of these games. Honestly, I don't see a lot of people having interest in playing in the first 3. And if you're interested in playing the first 3, then you're probably not interested in playing the last 4. And if you're interested in playing the last 4, you're probably really only interested in maybe Fallout 3 and New Vegas. Someone gifted me Fallout 4 and I still haven't gotten around to playing it. And that is through my own great chain. Maybe I should play that. Come to think of it. But yeah, Fallout 76 is just like a completely different game too. And weirdly, they are not including any kind of bonus here for Fallout Shelter, which you would think you could at the very least throw in some kind of bonus Nuka-Cola code for Fallout Shelter, so you could get a better start in Fallout Shelter. Maybe that is secretly hinting at Fallout Shelter is going to be taken down. It wouldn't make the worst sense in the world if that happened, because Microsoft really doesn't have a foot in the field of mobile games or microtransaction games, which is what Fallout Shelter is otherwise. So maybe Microsoft just wouldn't want to be involved with that. On the other hand, it also would make a lot of sense to just continuously support Fallout Shelter until you have some other mobile game where that could be your one experiment to try. Guess I need to play another game. There's enough daily quests still that need to make some progress in this festival. Yeah, definitely has some quests that I think I could probably work with. Although one of the requirements is to synchro summon, and am I really synchro summoning anything with the Harpy Lady deck? Yeah, you may not be able to actually synchro summon. This is synchro summoning. So we need white cards. And in this deck there are no white cards. And in this deck there's a bunch of white cards. So if you want to do synchro summoning, you would play this deck. Despite the fact that it seems really difficult to play. The most appealing thing about this though would just be the mini nuke thing to put on the shelf, and it's intentionally distressed art, so it could look even worse than this when you see the final product in your hands. It could be really small. I suspect it probably is. And still, it would be kind of a heavy, like, big thing to ship, so I bet shipping is gonna kill Bethesda on that. There doesn't seem to be like a button that you can press to make any sounds or make anything light up. So if I was gonna get this, it would be as a gimmick to put like a Raspberry Pi in it, which then would highlight a bigger problem with Raspberry Pis these days, because it's just very hard at this point to justify. Yeah, it's kind of hard to justify building anything or or using a Raspberry Pi in any kind of project, now that we are kind of just at the era of Steam Deck being the better place for emulation, and smaller Raspberry Pis or other devices, or ESP32 microcontrollers, all of those have higher reasons to so this can send a synchro summon back to the graveyard. This can let you draw cards. So let's see. I think the trick here is almost certainly to just keep this going and summon as many things as possible. See, and I just don't think that there was a connection there. What are we sending to the graveyard? Let's just send, I guess, one of the biggest things. Yeah, just really no connection there as far as link summoning this, which really wasn't link summoned. The other cards here and here, other than we have a 2200, he has now a 2300. It is very much a weird position as far as like the Raspberry Pi 5 now, where it is a very nice device, but it is a little too expensive and not powerful enough to really be a computer. Well, I guess maybe it's a little too cheap to be a computer, but then also a little too expensive to be the equivalent to what the Raspberry Pi 3B Plus, for instance, was. The prices have just gone up so much. And things have just kind of changed. If the Steam Deck wasn't in existence, then a Raspberry Pi 5 would have a lot more value still to make the retro emulation machines that can emulate a bunch of old machines, but not all of them. It's taken Raspberry Pis a very long time to just recently be capable of really connecting an NVMe hard drive SSD to it, which is really necessary if you're going to do any large amounts of data, because putting things on micro SDs is dangerous in the long run if the micro SD wears out, breaks, or gets stolen. And even on that, putting the operating system and booting on the NVMe is still somewhat difficult for the Raspberry Pi 5s. And then you run into problems where the Raspberry Pi 5s are kind of expensive because they have a lot of pins on them that they probably don't need. The entire header board could be unpopulated with pins, and it could just be holes instead. And if you started to approach that idea, then there is an argument that sometimes some of the features in the Raspberry Pi 5s are kind of unnecessary, and there just should be different variants of the same thing. Like maybe you really don't need 4 USB headers, maybe you don't need Ethernet connectors, the actual physical connectors there. Just having a $5–10 cheaper version of that would be potentially ideal. And I think both for motherboards and Raspberry Pi, we probably should hit a point where we straight up just have like edge connectors on the motherboards. And so instead of pins and instead of there's nothing I can do here, I'm gonna just lose. Instead of pins, instead of connectors, it should be more like the edge connectors that you'd see at the bottom of a graphics card, with just slots of metal pins on both sides that would go into a piece of plastic with pins on the inside of it, compression clip. I think the GPIO in that case would work for a lot of people, although at a certain point I guess that's what the compute modules are supposed to be, is if you're not really needing any of that. But then the compute modules themselves really are missing the 2 connectors that do need to exist. There probably does need to be one USB or some kind of micro mini USB, probably just a USB-C for power, USB-C for input that could then be plugged into a hub. So 2 USB connectors, and maybe that's it. Yeah, all the other connectors on a compute module could be through their high pin interconnects that they already have. Yeah, I'm just gonna stick with hard piece ladies. I really just don't think I can win with anything else, and frankly I'll probably only win with just luck. The people on this playing this festival are just playing really hard. They've figured it out. And yeah, there's no competition also compared to the Raspberry Pi 5. There's just nothing that's supporting it as well. So getting like an Orange Pi that might be a little bit faster, or a little bit different, doesn't make any sense. So yeah, Raspberry Pi certainly brought me into the idea of maker spaces and making things, and now it seems like just everything is kind of slowed down, and I definitely see that. I'm not seeing as many interesting projects or as many interesting gadgets coming out. So, yep. play this card, I think. I guess inherently, I probably was just growing up at that right time in which gadgets were very prevalent. Like, and now we've hit kind of a saturation point overall for gadgets. Oops. Anyways, I'm supposed to be talking about video game news. And I'm not doing that. If there was ever a case where it wouldn't have been worth it to take an extra 50 damage, I should have attacked with this one to the defense mode, in case it had 1900 defense, and then just attacked directly with that. YouTube Gaming, I don't know why I really report on this, is once again putting basically the same thing I think we saw before. Drop a link to a creator's video you watched today. So it seems like they are just going to try and tweet that consistently. Which isn't the worst idea. Maybe they're even going back and deleting it, or maybe it was YouTube, a different YouTube Twitter channel that was asking people to drop links. It's not a terrible thought though, to promote. Yeah, try and see who is watching what as far as YouTube gaming goes. Okay. I'll add this. We'll add this. Bethesda focusing mostly on Indiana Jones. They, I guess, are distracting here by announcing the Fallout thing. Noticeably though, in the Fallout thing, I guess it's also worth pointing out that they aren't really making any new content here. They could make something for Fallout 76 or Fallout 4 or Fallout Shelter to celebrate the TV show and cross-promote it. Personally, I might get one of these toys, but I probably would hope to find it on eBay cheap or something like that in a few years. You probably could just find a toy mini nuke already for sale. It just would not be Fallout branded. Video Games Chronicle says layoffs have reportedly hit the Everywhere studio. Build a Rocket Boy. Cuts across several departments were announced internally on Monday, it's been claimed. Now, Everywhere is a game I recognize by name, but couldn't tell you anything about it. If this is a screenshot of it, it looks somewhat interesting, but as far as I know, it's just like a metaverse. Let's see. So that protected one harpy lady. Grand Blue Fantasy Versus Rising has a DLC character of 2B. Second trailer for this DLC character, 2B, which you can see 2B drawn probably more in the art style of Grand Blue Fantasy Versus Rising. But what really this highlights is just how long-lasting 2B has been, to the point where I think we may very well have to assume that she has, with her iconic high-fashion black dress and mask and striking hair proportions and knee socks, although really the knee socks, thigh socks, stockings, whatever, haven't really recognized those before, noticed those before. I think she's just going to be a character that is going to be as iconic, at least as like Cloud from Final Fantasy is. She may, if she stays around long enough in the minds and hearts of fans, be a character that is as popular as Mario or Princess Peach, at least. Although that is kind of a big gap between, you have iconic characters like Mario and Donkey Kong that parents and grandparents would recognize these days, to 2B, who's only been around for maybe 4 or 5 years. And there really isn't a lot of iconic characters in the middle ground as far as characters that would have been introduced in a Super NES or Nintendo 64 or GameCube timeline. There was definitely a lot of effort to have those kinds of characters and create those kinds of characters, but Conquer might be the best example of that, or Banjo-Kazooie might be the best example of that. And I would say right now 2B is more recognizable and more loved than Conquer or Banjo-Kazooie are, which that I think also highlights how this whole thing could just turn around after a few years and people would eventually just lose interest in Nier Automata. You also have this contrasting need as a content creator, as a video game developer. They have this contrasting need to make another Nier game in the Nier series, and to make another Nier game in the Nier series, then they need to move focus away from 2B. They can't just have 2B be the protagonist of the remaining series. It wouldn't be terrible if they tried that for a couple games, but eventually you can have a trilogy of 2B, but then you need to move on to the let's see. Start with Harpy's Featherduster, which is a card that many Yu-Gi-Oh players play outside of Harpy decks. Yeah. Noticeably, Cloud from Final Fantasy did not appear in every single in every Final Fantasy game after his first appearance. The argument that 2B is oversaturated and overhyped as a character outside of the game is, I think, a pretty valid argument. guess the question to ask is, would be, can I do anything else? Because he's just going to surrender, and on that victory I think that is a good place to end playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Today. Although I might play some more off screen. Today's a little bit of a weird day. I grabbed some 433 megahertz, I think that's the right frequency, sensor accessories for my smart alarm system. It's a weird twist here. Like, modern concept would be to use just smart, these were water sensors for leaks, leak detection sensors. And a modern version of this would be to pay more and get Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or Zigbee or Z-Wave or Thread, even compatible water sensors. And the reason you would do that is because just everything is connecting directly to Wi-Fi, and you can just get a little bit better information. I think you can get battery percentages being sent by each device instead of just having to assume that the batteries are good for a water leak sensor that you're going to put somewhere and then forget about it. Whereas the advantage of getting 433 megahertz ones is that I already had the hub that can receive 433 megahertz signals in this kind of cheap plug-in alarm that is supposed to be like an alarm system, a do-it-yourself small alarm system for something you would probably do for an apartment, not for a house, where ideally a house should be wired, and it all should be wired if you really were going to do that. But it's also kind of insane to run like a couple of wires to a water leak sensor that would be under a sink or under a toilet, and near a water heater or pipes that might burst. Pipes behind like your refrigerator might be a good example, something that could burst. Pipes behind a washer and dryer, well, not dryer, but washing machine would make some sense. So yeah, modern concept would be to just buy individual ones of those and have a bunch all competing for your Wi-Fi, which Wi-Fi's fall apart after a certain number of devices. Although in the case of the water leak sensors, they probably would go to sleep and not really connect in after the initial connection until it had a signal to send, so it probably wouldn't be a big deal. But the advantage of 433 megahertz is A, there's cheaper. You pay about $20 for one Wi-Fi smart leak sensor, where you pay $15 for like 4 water leak sensors. 2, at 433 megahertz compared to 2.4 gigahertz, the signals should go further, and the devices I had antennas on them which are much longer, and just generally the longer antennas, the better you might get reception on something, if they are tuned correctly. And 3, the reason why this works better, I think, although it is definitely a trade-off, is that if your Wi-Fi happens to be down for some reason, or they just lose connection, a 433 megahertz sensor will directly connect to the hub and still set off the alarm on the hub, even though the hub connects to Wi-Fi and as a smart device. The hub itself is its own separate system that is redundant and still working regardless of whether it's connected to a Wi-Fi or an internet, where the smart devices could not set off a buzzer or alarms. There's probably some water sensors that have buzzers built into themselves, but most of them don't. They expect you to use the app, they expect you to get the signal from the app, and they expect connections to always be there. Which, who hasn't experienced the internet being down or the Wi-Fi being down? My new replacement security cameras also have that same system where the security cameras connect to the network video recorder, and everything there, theoretically, I haven't tested it fully out, should always be recording and always working. But then it also connects to my Tuya smart home. And frankly, I think I could connect it to other computer programs. So if I wanted to, I could probably stream it through OBS if I wanted to. There's no reason why I would ever do that. That would be a huge breach of security to do that, but I could see a reason to do it that way. Like if you had like a camera pointed at the aquarium, for instance, and then you had a live stream of just the fish swimming around. But yeah, we are very much at the point though where 433 megahertz security accessories are going to start going the way of the dinosaur, which is to really say nothing, because if anybody tries to sell you a security system, they're going to try and sell you incredibly old, incredibly overpriced equipment anyways. So you definitely will still see a lot of 433 megahertz wireless accessories in those cases. But if you are buying the devices yourself, it's almost certainly going to be some kind of newer smart device technology, which theoretically that should be Thread connecting to Matter, but the Matter standard has really made no improvements. I haven't even heard anybody bother to talk about Matter in the past couple of months after like CES has happened, and even in the CES Matter wasn't really making great waves. Alright, let's talk about video game news now exclusively, so we can actually finish this stream in a reasonable time. Apparently, according to Video Games Chronicle, Sony's value reportedly has been dropped by 10 billion, I assume this is US dollars and not 10 billion yen, following a disappointing PlayStation financials. This, I assume, also means it is the entirety of Sony and not just Sony Interactive Entertainment. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a lot of people also just buying and selling, and we see it climb back up pretty quickly. There's a report that Blizzard is laying off almost 140 workers in Ireland. It's claimed the company has refused to negotiate with union representatives since announcing the cuts, which, yeah, inherently it is fairly easy in a lot of countries for a company to just announce layoffs and cuts and just refuse to negotiate with the union, because forever they can just stall them out forever, because there is just no law or mechanic really there to force a company to come to the negotiation table, particularly in the United States and a lot of states in the United States. And if Blizzard of Ireland here is planning on just shutting down or laying off most of their employees, the union going on strike can only do so much. Now, there is a trick here with unions, that they could go on strike for as long as they would want, and it could just be a case where they are striking not so much to hurt Blizzard, but more so to just pay the employees, because you get a percentage of your paycheck from a well-funded strike fund assuming your union does have a well-funded strike fund for for as long as it can be funded. And the amount you get paid is different, I think, basically based on every local and just how much you actually are required to strike. You might be required to strike and be on the picket line for like 3 hours a week, and then you can just get like a side job and you can be paid pretty good to be on that picket line for three hours a week, and then work a side job to make up some other money. And so, yeah, if a union really is about supporting its members, and a lot of people are being laid off, and this is just the end, that would make sense to do it that way. Although, frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if a union could just vote to dissolve a strike fund in general and pay out its members. Although that probably wouldn't happen, because if you dissolved the strike fund, then you couldn't really support any other unions or locals in the area. But yeah, there is an argument to go on strike even if the company was completely being shut down. And yeah, the first the first part of trying the union bust is to refuse to negotiate once a union has already been established. I did hear that there was a bill being proposed, and there's lots of bills being proposed, and none of them really go anywhere in the United States, to make illegal forced meetings that make forced meetings illegal. Very often when people decide that they might want to vote on the union, the companies will force all of the employees on company time while they're being paid to go to these presentations meetings, either by high management or by hired spokesmen, who will then try and pressure and trick, and frankly sometimes lie, I'm sure, about how bad it would be if they voted yes to unionize, and just a forced propaganda experience, which in any other case, being forced to attend a meeting that has nothing to do with your job otherwise would be considered a drastic change of your job duties, and potentially even grounds for unemployment, that you were effectively, for that 1 hour meeting, fired from what your job was as far as what you were actually hired to do, and then hired to work in a completely different capacity that you were not hired to do, that you did not agree to when you accepted the job offer. Which, yeah, that is not allowed or acceptable to some extent in the United States. You can't be hired to be a McDonald's burger flipper and then be told that you actually are going to be a clothes folder at a like Walmart. Yeah, just doesn't, it can't work that way. You didn't accept that job. Now weirdly, they get away with a lot of that, like the example of being hired as a McDonald's burger flipper and then being told to be the janitor and clean the bathrooms. You kind of do get told that that's part of your job descriptions at the beginning, and very often that is the case, where you are cleaning bathrooms and being a burger flipper, which really that shouldn't be the case either. Yeah, I guess I don't have anything more to say about this. This is a GameDeveloper.com article. We have a Video Games Chronicle says that the upcoming Crazy Taxi reboot is a AAA game, according to Sega. It's a number one classic Sega games getting modern reboots. I have to really question how that could be the case. Honestly, I question how you would even want to play Crazy Taxi 2 the extent that you would feel like it is a AAA game. Who really wants to put 60 to 200 hours into playing Crazy Taxi? The world would have to be giant, I suppose. And even at that, it would feel like this would just be a modern take on like a racing game. And even racing games, after you get to like 30 or 40 tracks, I think that's pretty much it. What you probably would need to do is get crazier and crazier challenges and have only about a third of the game be around picking someone up in a taxi and delivering them to a specific spot. I think you probably are going to have jumps and rings and tricks and avoid damage, probably cause damage over avoiding damage in your car. But even at that, I think you struggle to get to 60 hours of gameplay, which then, if it's not a question of the amount of gameplay you get that would define a AAA game, which it almost always isn't really what they mean when they say AAA, then you're just talking a level of polish. And I just don't see how you get AAA level of polish, even if you have really amazing graphics. That's only going to get you so far. There's also an interesting thought here in that the big yellow taxi cab, which never really looked like this with no roof on top, is just not iconic anymore. Like, it's not the black cab that you would have inside of London. It's not the taxi cabs and Ubers you would get in Manhattan and New York. And anywhere else, you're just going to get an Uber that is any kind of car. Which, yeah. So for nostalgia's sake, it's going to be a big yellow car, almost certainly. But that is not going to translate as well. I think Sega is trying to be probably far too ambitious by bringing back its old games, while noticeably not really trying to be that ambitious by creating a new game. It feels like it would have been a better thing if they had announced 4 classics are coming back and then 1 new AAA game is in development, or 2 new AAA games are in development in the same breath. That Sega needs to say, we're going to bring back some nostalgic pieces, but we're also looking to the future, and that they can't just rely on constantly trying to make Sega Sonic games that sometimes work and sometimes don't. Nintendo's shares also dipped following reports of a 2025 release for whatever the Switch 2 is actually going to be called. Analysts remain calm, however, as an announcement is expected eventually. Well, isn't that always the case? Then an announcement is expected eventually. And yeah, we already talked about Fallout. Let's see. There was a post by this lady that apparently is going to PAX East, but maybe isn't really related. Yeah, and there's a reply here to what my concern was too. Oh yeah, here it is. So she put out this thing, and this got retweeted by, I think, PAX, saying, we're hiring for a game designer at Peak Games, an official account for, I guess, New Zealand's largest game development and publishing studio, but they're struggling to get applications from women. Our game design team currently has no women. In my humble opinion, it would be cool to see that change. Retweets appreciated badass women of hashtag Into the Dead for a hype, which I guess is this game and such. Now, I don't know what the laws are in New Zealand as far as recruiting and hiring people, but in the United States, this is dangerously close to sexism and illegal hiring practice to say that they have received positions and offers, and this almost certainly does happen all around the world, that you receive offers and you're just looking to hire a minority, but you don't say it out loud and provide evidence that can be used against you in court, like this Harriet Preble has done. Effectively, anybody who has applied for this position up until this point, this February 15th tweet, now can sue and have evidence against your company, Pickpock Games, saying you refused to hire me because you were exclusively looking to hire a woman, and even though I had better qualifications and was available for the job and actually applied for the job. It is inherently, I think, unfair that most people would agree that any class of people or any person would simply be ignored and their application would be ignored. It's criminal how many people's applications get ignored by computer programs and just stupid rules and regulations. Anyways, but yeah, this definitely seems like this is crossing the line into illegality. If this was in the United States, maybe in New Zealand, there is just such a pro-women ruling that that's just not the case. And the retweet here goes from a repost here from another game developer, the business owner of Pickpock, says, I'm entirely sure our recruitment process is legal and fair. Asking for more diverse pool of candidates is reasonable and legal. Wanting better representation of women in design when making games played by or made specifically for women is creatively and commercially sound. So the boss is publicly throwing support behind this tweet. It is almost certainly in the phrasing and saying things out loud that's the problem here. Inherently, the intent is not something that I really complain about. Like, I too want to see more women in the video game industry in developing, but I also see that there are very obvious reasons why there aren't women and why it is very much a boys' club. A major part of that is that there is a high level of exploitation in the video game industry amongst game developers. They are overworked and they're underpaid. Women very often don't have to put up with that. They have better offers and they have less social pressure that they have to work at all compared to just being a housewife or marrying somebody, getting a sugar daddy, whatever. So yeah, that certainly explains the reason in part why you don't see it. Then there is also just the fact that it is a boys' club, and the video game industry is full of a lot of people who probably don't have a good set of social skills and don't really work with women particularly as well as they should be. And so there is other issues. I also think that there's inherently considerably less pressure put on young girls and women to actually learn maths and sciences, and while we try to promote that, there may very well just be some biological differences there too, and that they struggle perhaps a little bit with math and sciences. I think they could certainly overcome that. There's a lot of sexism that is still happening in the schools from teachers and from just institutionalized sexism to not push girls into math and sciences, or frankly not push girls into doing anything in it at all. They think they can just have an OnlyFans and frankly, a lot of them can just have an OnlyFans, where very few little boys or high school boys think they can have an OnlyFans and that be their career. Here we can see yet another retweet. Half of our players are women, not to mention we are creating games primarily targeting women, so if we are alienating anyone currently, it is women, and we'd like to address that. So he's definitely reposting quite a bit, or at least 2 times. This was from the 18th. I wouldn't be surprised if there's more of it. Certainly, I think there's just a better way to phrase this. How would we phrase this? Let's see. We're hiring for a game designer at PokePoke Games, period. Maybe that's the only thing you really can say and should say. Maybe you just leave off the struggle for women. Maybe you just put in the picture that it is all women, and then you subtly hint it without saying anything in print. Our game design team currently has no women. Is probably something also that you would just hide. And then opinions not needed. And then badass women have hashtag into the dead for hype. And trying to get a hashtag trending is unneeded. Yeah, you just straight up would say this first part. We're hiring for game designer Pickpock Games. Retweets appreciated. Hashtag into the hype dead for hype if you need to do that. And then you put the same picture here. But yeah, that almost certainly is what the way to phrase that. And then you just do the same thing you intend on doing, because there's a clear intention being implied here that they are trying their best to not hire a non-woman. And I'll say non-woman because, yeah, transgender or agendered people are not being mentioned here, too. But yeah, there's a clear implied intent that they are throwing away applications or not seriously considering applications from anyone who isn't a woman up until this point. And you can certainly say we're looking for more applications before we make a decision and still have this, but saying it out loud is the weird thing. And let's not dance around it. Almost certainly there are a lot of jobs that will do the exact opposite, and there will be plenty of applications from women in a job, and there will be a sexist boss or employer or recruiter or HR department that is just not seriously considering any of the female applicants and just looking for more things. Inherently, any company can just have a position open forever until they find someone that is quote unquote the right fit, which is just code for the person I like or the person that looks like me. That is a major reason why you see amongst CEOs and C-suite executives that they are all old white men. This is because they hire people that look like them, and that is as much a concern, if not more, than actual qualifications. It is insulting on the other end of it too if somebody did get hired just because they're a woman, or significantly because they're a woman. You are really diminishing that human being down to just their gender, when gender really shouldn't play a role at all as to your ability to do a job or not. So yeah, the positive sexism aspect also needs to be considered. Moving on to censored gaming, there was a bit of censorship, I guess. Anti-censorship, censorship. it's gone around in a circle basically. Nexus Mod has made their own personal opinions part of their rulings more recently, as far as just if somebody makes a mod that tries to mod out, say, the LGBTQ plus options in a game, Nexus Mods won't let that happen, and hasn't let that happen in a couple of them, couple of cases. Well, most recently there was the Tomb Raider trilogy that came out, and it put in that poorly worded, I think most would agree, warning at the front about some depictions being culturally insensitive. They never really explained what the warning is there. But somebody made a mod to remove the warning at the front, and Nexus Mods took down that mod. Which, in that case, if somebody personally wants to remove a warning from a game, I think Nexus Mods should allow that kind of mod to exist. The mod still exists elsewhere, I'm sure, but it does seem like Nexus Mods is just going to increasingly try and decide what it thinks is right and wrong for people. And inherently, if an individual wants to be a bigot, and they're going to go out of their way and find a mod that removes all the LGBTQ plus content in a game, you might as well just let them do it. Like, they're going to do it anyways. Nobody's going to accidentally go to Nexus Mods and find an anti-LGBTQ plus mod. And anyways, so you might as well just not delve deeply into that mess. Speaking of delving into messes, Blue Sky is yet another social media federated platform that has gone full public now. So I made a Blue Sky account. I'm probably not going to do anything with it though. I'm just going to sit on the account name, and even in that, the appropriate account name that I would like was already taken, which is always the case because it's always invite only, and even before it's invite only, a 4-letter RYDO account name is going to just be locked up and taken by either a very early adopter or by the company themselves for short 4-letter names. So far, I don't see anything really changing too much with Blue Sky, other than maybe there would be enough momentum that people would jump from Twitter/X to Blue Sky. And frankly, it would be companies jumping from Twitter and X to Blue Sky, and I just don't think companies are going to care enough. They would always just say, well, let's also stay on X at that point, and then that's going to keep X, Twitter, from still being viable, unless Twitter/X fails completely and gets shut down. On other censorship around the Lara Croft Tomb Raider remaster, they have censored in a couple releases. I think this has been done, but in the most recent, they have censored the pixely art on the back of the jacket of this character named Perry. Originally, this blonde girl was topless, and it would have just been a pixely image, and they have remastered the old graphics for her to have a top now and be in a bikini, and they've censored the new graphics. Remastered is the wrong term. They censored the old graphics, and when they remastered and made new textures, they also have a bikini on it. Which, there's not actually a reason for that in this case, because they were already rated M for mature in in both the United States and the Japan. So there would have been a case, I guess. No, because it's digital only, it's not rated in Japan, so it doesn't have to worry about not being able to be listed even at the highest rating by the Sero rating board in Japan, which doesn't allow nudity to be rated. PC releases don't have to be rated by Sero. And Infra-Mature in the ESRB United States rating system does allow for topless nudity. So it probably has more of a case that they didn't want the ratings boards to put on there as a warning that it had partial nudity as part of the rating, because then that would just get people thinking and posting made up stories that Lara Croft herself is topless in one of these games. It would just bring up nude mod stuff that they just don't want people talking about or remembering. Yeah, inherently the company in charge now of Lara Croft is really not the same people who made Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3, or at least not all of them. And Crystal Dynamics definitely does not want anybody sexualizing Lara Croft at all, despite the fact that she was totally designed to be sexualized, at least partially to be a sexual being of some sort. And now she has been turned into a fairly asexual being in the most recent reboot, and we'll see what happens in the newest reboot when it comes out, although they are going back with the traditional outfit. So with that traditional outfit, I think there probably is some room for her to be a sexual being. Frankly, she needs some kind of romantic partner. Indiana Jones, since she is a ripoff of Indiana Jones, I don't think works as a movie series if you took out the romantic interest in each of those movies. It would just be this weird old guy running around with his father more often than anything. Yeah. Although, in fairness, they also took Indiana Jones in the wrong direction by the time they got to Crystal Skull, in that he's now arguably too sexual. Instead of being a bachelor who's suave with the ladies, he's now the dad that is trying to be a fatherly figure when he really doesn't. He isn't really well written to be a fatherly figure. There would have had to have been some better translation there. I really think it would have been nice, come to think of it, as far as Indiana Jones, if at some point in the Crystal Skull you saw him, like, you saw pictures of him being a couple with a female love interest, giving birth to a child, raising the child, and then you see the child grow up, and you just like raise the child and have the family on archaeological digs. And then instead of just finding out you had a child, you could just flip it around where Indiana Jones is going to save his child in Crystal Skull, that he has always known and raised, and they actually do care for each other quite a bit. They can have a little bit of friction, obviously, as a father-child relationship would, but it really should just be that the Last Crusade would be the middle of a story, and then Crystal Skull could be the flip of that, where in Last Crusade you have Indiana Jones saving his father, and going on an adventure to save his father. In Crystal Skull, you have Indiana Jones going to save his son, and then that would be a nice inverse statement of, and you could basically make the same movie again, just slightly different. It would be very interesting then if Crystal Skull was a good movie. Still probably shouldn't involve Crystal Skulls, but if it was just like a really, really good watch, to watch The Last Crusade, then to watch the Crystal Skull back to back, just a 4-hour marathon. But yeah, my point there, as I'm rambling here, is that Indiana Jones does not work without some kind of love interest, which could be a child, that you love the child as a parent and child should, or it could be a romantic love interest. Whereas Lara Croft in the reboot series has some friends, but kind of forgets about the friends most of the time, and that's about it. Yeah. There's talk of the father, talk of the mother in the Tomb Raider reboot, but they really don't go any further than that. Sony has come out and said that a lot of these stories about Rise of the Ronin not being released in Korea are not 100% accurate, because Sony is claiming now that they never announced that it was coming out in Korea. So, I mean, in all fairness, it probably was that. That was probably the case, where officially Sony never said anything about the game being released in Korea. Maybe Sony did say that there would be a global release, but global doesn't include every single country. There's plenty of almost no games get released in like Saudi Arabia, and North Korea is not getting any video games, so global doesn't mean every country. But yeah, Sony's trying to, I guess, stop any more stories by just saying what was probably true, that they never announced or planned to release it in Korea. And in all fairness, that very much may have been the case, that they knew with one particular historical character playing a role that Korea would be potentially offended by that, and Korea is not a big enough market to work around that. That's pretty much all I have all Censored Gaming has today. And then YouTube creators tweeting 59 minutes ago, "You deserve to see your channel members grow. Hashtag YouTube Partner Program." Weirdly, I do feel like I am getting more views, more watch time, and more subscribers. It still would have to snowball quite a bit for my channel, though, to really succeed. This Monday, I'm feeling motivated or inspired, and you can see they're still trying to desperately. This was 5 hours ago. 20 retweets, 92 comments. Yep. Every super chat, super sticker, and super thanks is proof that you're a superstar. Hashtag YouTube Partner Program. It really has just become advertising and spammy. Yeah, and pretty much there's just nothing here that they're saying that's good information or helpful information. We have a Video Games Chronicle article here. Apparently, Immortals of Avium is being sold for £1 in a UK supermarket Asda. That game was previously reduced to £5. So they are definitely just trying to clear that game off the shelf. That is gotta be a crushing blow to the creators of Immortals of Avium. Although weirdly, if you also look at like the price of games on the side, you have like Resident Evil 4 PS4 edition here selling for £35, and then you have Gran Turismo for the PS5 selling for £30. So the pound itself may be, I guess weak might be the right term to use there. A £1 may still be the equivalent of £5 to £6, $5 to $6 US. I don't think it's that bad, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if a pound is about the equivalent of $2 to $50. But yeah, you see something like this, and that definitely feeds into stories of digital discs going away too. There's just no way to sustain having a $1, £1 package on the shelves. There's just something else you can put on that shelf that could sell for more. And then we have what here? The Lunar New Year sale, I think, is probably over at this point. Regardless, I still can't click on the free daily rewards, so that's going to be the end of that. And before we go through all of the games that came out on Friday, I'm gonna pause the recording and take a little bit of a break, so I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. One of the things that definitely would be a case here is that by taking a break right before I look at all the games, I potentially lose some momentum, but probably wouldn't lose that much momentum really. And yeah, I've also updated my computer and rebooted the computer, so every single one of these tabs is likely going to require a refresh, unfortunately. So this is the point here where if I was going to try and make YouTube Shorts, I would have to do something to trigger each of these tabs as being in the queue, being in the list of games to make a YouTube short on. And inherently I'm going through and showing off these games. A lot of these are older games anyways that are getting new YouTube shorts because they're coming to either new consoles or they're getting an update or something. Something that would consider making them trending again. But yeah, I'm just going through these way faster than 1 minute. So at about 2 hours and 11 minutes here, I have so far looked at just about 7 games to show off. Let's keep a count in my head as far as how many in total that would be. I'm just gonna be on the silent count if I can on every single game I'm showing off, and hopefully I don't get way too off on this. Now this is interesting. You have like a vertical manga as a concept. I'll give that a chance. Whereas these other ones, I jumped into new games that aren't on the follow list. Should be up to like 15 now games that I've chosen, but we should also run into some games that I'd say no to. Like, in fact, we should be hitting quite a few games. Here, this looks like a card game with just some either AI generated or licensed imagery. Battle Babes is not a terrible name for a game, but it also feels like almost certainly not going to go anywhere. Free to play multiplayer card game. Completely free to play, no in-app purchases. Wins equals 100 coins, losses. Interesting. So it's a completely free to play game. How are they going to make money to continue to support it? Yeah, I almost assume that it's not going to make money and it won't be continued to be supported. I'm going to put this on the follow list, but I'm not going to make a short on it. Because, yeah, I don't think it's going anywhere. I'm going to say I'm at up to 16 now, as far as games that would make a YouTube short. Being on the silent count while doing other things is pretty much impossible. 17. That's why I'm not actually making it be silent. 18, we'll give that a chance. If anything, the 2 hours and 11 minutes that I spent to get to this point before I started looking at the games from last week should have been the time that I should have been making YouTube shorts from, I guess, maybe the week before or the stream before that. And so, yeah. And that too would be kind of difficult, but not super difficult if the first hour of every stream was also making YouTube shorts at the same time. Because the first hour of the stream would just be me clicking. I'm surprised this one hasn't been advertised. Gunvolt Records Psychronicle 19, I guess is what we're up to now. I think I'm gonna say no to this game. It kind of does feel like this is a Chinese game that's trying a little bit harder to be a game, but it's still kind of falling flat. Give that a chance. Let's see, that's 21. We have another point-click adventure game. We've seen quite a few of these lately. Let's make sure it supports English. Spirit Hunter Deathmark 2. This must have come out. Which, honestly, at this point, even if there's an announcement and then the game comes out the next day, I think it's just easier to not try and work around that and just make 2 YouTube shorts. There's almost certainly going to be enough YouTube shorts between 2 videos anyways. And if there wasn't enough YouTube shorts in between the 2 videos, when it was first announced that it would have gotten a YouTube short versus when it had a release date and came out, then the videos would have uploaded right next to each other anyways, if that was the case. I really wish I had like Loop Hero. I'd like to play that game. But yeah, I also don't want to buy any more games at the moment, and I'm trying to justify spending money to get an OLED Steam Deck. What I'd really like to see is somebody to make a very cheap tablet, because my tablet is also needing replacement, not repair, just because the battery is old. I'd like one that is just big screen, but then doesn't really need a camera, doesn't really need to have a ton of CPU power. Probably needs to have slightly better CPU power than what my current one has, and slightly better RAM. And in a tablet in particular, it doesn't have to have massive amounts of storage because I expect it to have expandable micro SD storage, or otherwise I wouldn't buy it. But yeah, it kind of doesn't need any of the other gimmicks around it either, like acceleration and compass and things like that. All are little features that if you were to just make a bare bone device that didn't have that and could get the price down because it was missing those features, that would be great. But more than likely, if you did remove the cameras and the acceleration meters and any kind of Wi-Fi cell phone connectivity and any kind of forward-facing camera or fingerprint sensor, you still are going to have the vast majority of your price be the screen. And you can't get rid of a CPU completely. You can't get rid of a GPU completely. Here's that political game I saw before, which I'll put it on the fall list, but almost certainly this is just a troll joke game. But weirdly, a decent amount of visual polish on the characters, when usually when you see Joe Biden or Trump depicted or Putin depicted, it's done pretty poorly. But yeah, I definitely am not going to make a YouTube short on that or anything that is just so overtly political. Now I think I'm still at like 22 tabs. Which that would mean 22 minutes. Here we have another one to bring it up to 23. Which 23 minutes out of the first 60 minutes of a stream wouldn't be too hard to really do. And honestly, it's way more than 60 minutes. 60 minutes was the first hour playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And then I spent another hour just talking about big news. Goat Simulator 3, I'll guess to 24. And then undoubtedly I should be, I'm gonna give this a chance. This looks like this might be a math game that might be worth promoting. Yeah. Inherently this is stuff I should curate and look through all the games first before in between streams, but I never get around to doing it. And that's kind of the problem, is that I've just made a lot of extra work for myself, and then I've committed very poorly to actually doing any of the work off screen. And that's why I do so much in these live streams in the first place, is because it forces me, I'm gonna say I'm at 25 now, it forces me to be consistent. Ink shop game. I would almost say yes to this if this wasn't fairly obviously just a poor port of a mobile game. But yeah, if I don't force myself to do it on screen, I just won't get around to it. Which, speaking of off-screen stuff, the clips probably aren't going to work today, and they didn't work last time either. My programming on that was working, and then as soon as I tried to program it and outsmart it so it would remove duplicates, that failed and messed it up, and I didn't spend the time before today's stream to kind of undo that. I possibly could do it right now, but I also would have to point out that it does look like clips have not gotten any views at all, which, okay. Now we're up to like 26. This one's close. I see Jaden Brown is on the chat saying hi. Hi, Jaden. Yeah. This game, Weird Dreams. I feel like there was something about this game, but I can't remember what it was. Or maybe I'm thinking of a different game. I'm gonna put this on the follow list. I feel like there was like a celebrity. No, I think I'm confusing this with like Toonstruck. Yeah, there was a game called Toonstruck that had a celebrity in it, and there definitely were some just very weird games that were made overall in the past, and now they're getting re-released. Of course, there were a lot of old games too, like this, or old games that look like this, that I just don't think that there would be any real relevance to this. This is if this is a brand new game, which it possibly isn't. Yeah, this is another Atari Presents. So Atari is just throwing out old Atari games. You know what? I'll make a short on it anyways, just because somebody might be nostalgic for this, but probably not. But yeah, even at this, since we know these are old games, emulation is still probably the better way to go about playing these old games if you did want to play these old games. And the only reason you'd possibly buy these on Steam is just in the hopes that you would then own it forever and legally own the ROM, or easily could get the ROM out of these games, which there's a decent possibility that is the case. Almost certainly these games are just being run through some kind of emulator, and emulating Atari games is not difficult at all for almost any hardware. I did see that there was a YouTube video for a new e-ink, e-paper, color e-paper tablet, and e-ink and e-paper would be interesting, but it almost certainly would raise the price of the screens. This is another Atari game again, so we'll make a YouTube short on that. We'll show off some old games, I guess. There is, I think, maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, a patent that will expire on e-ink and e-paper, which then will stop the one company, maybe two companies that have the monopoly on e-ink and e-paper, and then we might see the price of e-ink and e-paper screens go down. It's a technology that, I mean, really, the fact that it was patented highlights the problem with the idea of inventing something new. Should I give this a chance? I guess I will. In modern times, and getting that exclusive monopoly by having a patent. That concept just doesn't really work anymore, and I'm not sure it ever really worked. We just move faster now. It's not the same situation as it would have been 200 years ago, where you would have had to make a working miniature model of your engine or whatever device you wanted the patent. You'd have to send it to the patent office and be approved, and then your design on an engine would be patented. I'm gonna give this a chance too. I'm gonna be very generous today, apparently. I think we're up to 30 games now that I've said yes to. 31 now. Even 200 years ago, when making a patent on building a better way to make a bread slicer or make an engine, that information, had it not been patentable, had people just either had to keep it a secret or it just got out to the public, would have probably sped up the development and reduced the price of a lot of products. Like car engines have been around for quite a long time. It would make sense that they would be more standardized, cheaper, more commoditized overall than what they really are. I'm thinking I'm gonna say no for Chromosome Evil 2. And yeah, I'm definitely gonna say no for this one. I guess I'll make a YouTube short around this, but I don't need to put that on the follow list. But yeah, in modern times, the fact that E came out and it could have been a really great technology that was really highly adopted, and then instead it's just been this very overpriced technology that's been very slow to go from black and white e-ink to color ink as a concept. It's been very slow for adoption, with e-ink screens mostly being used in retail stores, and even now retail stores still not really adopting or sticking to using e-ink screens over stickers. And yeah, the idea that it would be used in giant signage like billboards and things never really happened. The idea that it would have been used just like in the menu boards on the back of restaurants never really happened. TVs were just way cheaper in most of those cases. I'm gonna say no to Dream Slayer. It's not quite the right color palette, I would say, is the problem. It's just kind of hard to see things in the background, and it's a little too pink. And you have several screenshots here that are just empty. Maybe I'm being a little too picky there, particularly since I want to say yes to this game, Hope Is Gone. Which, yeah, that's really inconsistent there on why I would say yes to one and not the other. Low poly pixels to reassemble. So this is a jigsaw puzzle, basically trying to match on low polygon concept. Yeah, I don't think I need to highlight jigsaw puzzle games or similar types of puzzle games, and it being tagged point and click is highly inaccurate for what point and click should mean. Here we have another RPG Maker game, or RPG Maker looking game. Actually, this might be just an old RPG that isn't actually made in RPG Maker. And see, this is where this creates a weirdness, in that this might be an old game and I just don't know. So, do people really care to see a YouTube short around this game? I don't think they do. I need to be fairly cruel about how many YouTube shorts get made, because I'm making way too many of them. And there's only so many I can flood onto YouTube, really. Although I probably could just flood a ton more if I spend a ton of effort on it. Weirdly, there is a situation where, like, a tablet is mostly just a big ebook reader, but then there still is an argument to have a smaller pocket-fitting ebook reader with like a black and white e-ink screen, like a small Kindle. And weirdly, it does kind of just feel like there's a desire for many to have two separate devices and carry around the two separate devices, when that doesn't really make a lot of sense. And buying a small ebook reader, I still mean a screen that would be bigger than a large cell phone, and that's only if you read books. And inherently, if you don't read books, then you don't need an ebook reader. But then tablets themselves are really just for watching TV on a medium-sized or small screen compared to a TV. I guess I'm gonna give this a chance and show it off. I think I'm up to like 35 now. Here we have what looks like another visual novel that maybe should be in the adult section, but isn't. 1+ hour of play, that's really short. Really short for $20. There's no way I can say yes to that if they're not just lying about the amount of time. Let's see the reviews. Let's see. The normal game is 855. The patch is 4.6 gigabytes. Wow. The 18+ anime visual novel plus wide views plus story equals Steam version is 1 hour, while the 18+ patch is 20 hours and a must to play this game. Launchy parallel world school themed hentai filled with banter. Follow our curator for similar games. So yeah, here we have another case of a game on Steam where they have released a game that is going to get very positively reviewed, 99% positively reviewed, based on having to go and find the patch to add the vast majority of content to the game, because Steam directly will not allow for the adult content to be in a game, and that's all this game really is. Or at least 19 parts of it are adult comedy and 1 part is the censored bit. And if the uncensored version of this is available on Steam, it is hidden behind the adult section that nobody ever sees. If we were to take a second and look at the first game in the series, it is also overwhelmingly positive. But this says here 2+ hours of story, and they're selling it for $17.49. The game is 568 megabytes. The patch is 4.5 gigabytes. So it's an interesting trick that they're doing, and they've been getting away with this trick since June 23rd, 2023, to straight up have an adult game that is severely censored. Yeah, that seems at odds with the way it should be done, almost certainly. Like, there inherently will be people that buy a $20 game, play 1 hour of content, and not realize that there's another 19 hours of content hidden behind a patch you have to go and find. And that's just unfair, frankly, because it's only the anime adult games that are really held to that standard and forced to do these kinds of tricks. Whereas a Western game can have adult content in it, but probably couldn't have as much in it. In the Western adult games get around it by just being in the adult section. And I think there's definitely an argument to be made, or at least debated, as to, isn't it worse to have the 3D CGI Western art style that is hyper realistic in the adult content, if adult content is considered bad or inappropriate for at all? And it obviously is inappropriate for some audiences, but if it's so bad that it has to be hidden in the store, then wouldn't it be slightly less bad, a fraction of a percentage less bad, to have a cartoon version of it that isn't even realistic in any way? Of course, that's definitely not Valve's stance. I'm gonna say I'm at like 36 games that I've decided to make YouTube shorts on, and I could go back and count it, but it's not worth the time. Although that argument, I think, probably falls apart too when you know that the vast majority of hentai on the internet is a lot more extreme than the vast majority of more realistic CGI content, or even live action adult content, which we've never seen any live action adult content actually allowed on Steam either, which I think they probably have an argument there too. This does not support English, otherwise I would have given it a chance as a VR game. Yeah. And I suppose it is worth mentioning that Valve's own credit, it has been a pretty long time since any video game company has straight up said that their game was not allowed to be published on Steam at all, or that they heavily had to censor it to get it on Steam. But maybe there's just straight up some non-disclosure agreements happening to stop people from saying that out loud. Most of these games are still garbage. But we are increasingly, as we get deeper and deeper into the year, getting more and more games getting released, and the quality of the games is maybe going up slightly, or it's just more games in general with the same percentage. Relaxing clear up match 3 game. I don't see it. I don't see this being an interesting game, so I'm gonna say no. A lot of this is just gonna start going down to personal opinions. Epstein. Here's a Jeffrey Epstein game, which, frankly, a Jeffrey Epstein meme game. I'm surprised it's taken this long to get to that point. And honestly, I don't think this really plays well, being called Epstein. Thwart the sinister plans of Jeffrey and Epstein. So maybe you're a hero going to Epstein's Island, but yeah. I just don't think you want to make a game based on an accused pedophile or have pedophilia anywhere close to the label of your game. And yeah, for the vast majority of people, the only reason they have ever heard of Jeffrey Epstein or would mention him is because they're trying to either attack one political person who was somehow met Jeffrey Epstein or interacted with Jeffrey Epstein, or they're trying to attack some other political person. Yep. Or just attack all political people who at some point was in the same room. This one looks polished enough, so I'm going to give this a chance. Although it's not my type of game, so I'm not going to put it on the follow list. I'm going to say that's probably 39 games now. But also it's taken me about 30 minutes to get to 39, so there's an inconsistent speed at which I would make the choice as far as whether a specific game deserves a YouTube short. And so I might not be able to move fast enough to keep the engine going, make the YouTube shorts at the exact same time that I'm streaming. And frankly, the entire idea only kind of makes sense if I am doing something very weird. Something worth risking the computer crashing, because I would be streaming or recording two things at once. Which that would be the next step, is that I'm gonna have to potentially try it to see if a computer ever could do it. And I think the more realistic thought of having two OBS programs streaming to two different places at the same, or recording two different things, I think the move there is probably to find some kind of different visuals, do something very creative with it. 20 small mazes for free. It's not terrible. Overwhelmingly positive, but it is just 20 small mazes, so I'm not going to bother to highlight it. I really have to question who is the audience for like a desperate need for free games on Steam. Like, you built a computer potentially, and then you couldn't afford the games to, even during a Steam sale. You just don't have a Steam account. Yep. I just question if there's actually an audience like that at all. Particularly since you could get into things like Dota or Counter-Strike Go for free. There's plenty of big name, free to play, free to start games. So something that's just like 20 small puzzles would make sense if it was on a cell phone app store, the iOS app store, the Google Play app store, where almost all those apps are charging or running ads on them. But knowing that there's like 14,000 games on Steam, I think that's a good estimate, and that there's probably at least 3,000 or 4,000 good games you could get. And of those 3,000 or 4,000 good games, there's probably at least 1,000 that you can get cheaply. There's just a weird argument that there's a weird argument there that there's just no reason to ever list a free game on Steam these days, unless it's really going to be a standout game. And I messed up the banners because programming's all messed up there, so let's go to the end of the show to reset that. And let's go over here. So looking at our 24-hour peak, we have Dueled falling down to the 5th spot with 430,000, and Apex Legends, PUBG, and Dota, and Counter-Strike 2 maintaining and regaining their heights. Helldivers 2 has bumped up to the 6th spot, so that's a change in the trend. And everything else looks about the same. Grand Blue Fantasy Relink still in the top 15. So we look at my chart and we can see the chart showing that same trend too. It's got way too many data points. It needs to reduce about half of these down. But yeah, the blue line here is Dueled, and we can see it's dropped down below 500,000. The orange line is PUBG Battlegrounds, and we can see that it has bounced back up above 500,000. And Apex Legends has bounced back up to a very high number, which it's been there before, but the last time what it was there was basically November 1st. So it's just been trending downward that whole time. And then the Rocket Blade points bouncing up. Baldur's Gate 3 is bouncing up. And the rest of them not really worth mentioning. And then Steam doesn't have a sale going on today, but give it a day and there probably will be a sponsored sale, franchise sale, something. It will have a full page takeover. Doom Eternal is $17.49. Diablo 4, I suspect the price should go down, but it honestly may never go down. Why is Doom Eternal Standard Edition only $8, whereas Deluxe Edition is $18, I guess. Dark Souls 3 half off and still $42. So what we're looking for here is just how far do we have to go to see Dueled. And I think today is probably the last day we should play that game, because even the creators of Dueled have said it's okay to go and play some other game that they've basically run out of content, and most people should by now have already seen all the contents that Dueled offers. It'll be interesting to see if they can put out any kind of update and get people to come back to the game at that point, or if it will just eternally be in early access and as such just never gets really any major update. We can have Tomb Raider Remastered. I was hoping we could see something from that. And then this is the game designed to look like a CDI Zelda game, and is Island of Insight. It's a puzzle game. Yeah, if money was no problem, I would definitely play Island of Insight. yeah, we have to go to top sellers to see the Steam Deck and Pal World. Wonder if there's some people buying Warframe thinking it's War Divers or Hell Divers, because I definitely could see making that confusion or being confused about the name of the game. Okay. So as far as Island of Insight is concerned, it's 83% positive, and it has over 30 reviews, so I do think I'll go ahead and put that on the wish list. As for Arzetti, it is 97% positive and over 30 reviews and not in early access, so I'll put that on the wish list. And as for Tomb Raider 1 through 3 Remastered, it's 87% positive with over 30 reviews, so we can just put that on the wish list. That is one of the things I really think I would love to see. Yeah, I really would love to see if you bought a Steam Deck for at least $350, if you could get even $100 worth of Steam Store credit for that to buy other games. Now that wouldn't be just made up money in the case of Valve, because they would still have to pay the people, whoever's games you bought, so it would be money coming out of Valve's pocket. So maybe what they could more realistically do is when you buy a Steam Deck, you get the Valve collection of games for free, which would then not really cost them any money. But pretty obviously, if Valve could do a Game Pass situation, they might consider doing that too. You spend a large amount of money for a Steam Deck, and then you get a Game Pass that function that just lets you rent video games at a cheaper metric. Although I would think Valve would screw that up pretty badly if they did do something like that. I feel like Valve would be so offhands about it that anybody who pays an extra $100 or just checks a box during a Steam Direct submission, their game would then be free for anybody who has the Game Pass, and then a Steam Game Pass would just be flooded with garbage games from Steam Direct publishers. So I'm not even gonna bother to try and fix the programming right now since we're in the middle of the stream. So I'm just going to read these headlines like they could be made in Eclipse to continue to just train myself, even though I know they probably aren't going to be made into Eclipse. So, and then we'll be done. And frankly, I don't think there's going to be that much news today anyways, so we should be done fairly early. So let's get at it. A new complete Fallout collection comes in a mini nuke storage case. PS5 Slim has been discounted by £70 in the UK. Layoffs reportedly hit Everywhere Studio Build a Rocket Boy. Steam update suggests a Dragon's Dogma 2 demo could be on the way. This week's free Epic Games Store title will be Super Meat Boy Forever. That's an interesting game to particularly make as your free giveaway game, because only a subset of gamers really are going to want to play Super Meat Boy Forever. The people who are into very difficult platformers and bloody and somewhat crude jokes. Nikon Direct returns next week with a new Terminator and Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown news. Star Wars Jedi actor says he'd like to play Cal Kestis in live action, but it has to, quote, make sense. Sony's value reportedly dropped by $10 billion following, quote, disappointing PlayStation financials. The upcoming Crazy Taxi reboot is a AAA game, according to Sega. Nintendo's shares dip following reports of a 2025 release for the Switch 2. Helldivers 2 concurrent Steam player count is now higher than all other PlayStation PC launches combined. That definitely speaks well for Helldivers 2 and possibly poorly for all the other PlayStation PC launches. Although in fairness, PlayStation PC launches have just been games that everybody has probably already played already, so it's not like a lot of people are going to go back and play Spider-Man or Last of Us on PC at the exact same time. Helldivers 2 is also a multiplayer game or a co-op game, I think, where the rest of PlayStation PC launches tend to be more single-player games. Moving on. Immortals of Avium is being sold for £1 in the UK supermarket Asda. From Software has acquired the Elden Ring trademark from Bandai Namco. And sources say that the Nintendo Switch 2 will launch in 2025. And that's going to bring us to the Gamatsu news now. We may have a little bit more of that. Power Wash Simulator DLC Warhammer 40k Special Pack launches February 27th. Let's see if we can get to the DLC and highlight that. Would it be this Midgar Special Pack? No, that's Final Fantasy. So the special pack that they're announcing is not listed on Steam yet, so I can't make a YouTube short on it. Time and Galaxy launches in Q2 of 2024 for the PS5, Xbox One, and Series, Switch, and PC. I have no idea what kind of game this is, though. It's already on my fall list, though. Yeah, if this is already on the fall list and it doesn't have a release date listed, I'm not going to make another YouTube short on it. Indie Live Expo 2024 has been set for May 25th. Game submissions are now open. I assume this is people submitting games to the expo to show off. Sandland gameplay overview trailer is available to watch on Gamatsu. Nacon Connect 2024 is set for February 29th. Grand Blue Fantasy vs. Rising DLC character 2B second trailer is available on Gamatsu. Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance has been rated in Korea. It's a complete edition with improvements and additional content. I would assume that means it's probably coming to everywhere in the world. It is still very weird that technically Shin Megami Tensei is the main storyline for the Persona series, and yet the two series look very, very different, and you really don't have to play Shin Megami Tensei to play Persona, and you don't have to play Persona to play Shin Megami Tensei. And pretty much only people in Japan play Shin Megami Tensei. Ex Istris world building trailer is available on Gematsu. This is a mobile game. Yeah, and I definitely don't feel like I should be getting interested or looking at mobile games at this point. I've already got 4 mobile games that I shouldn't be playing that I am playing, and I need to curate it down to maybe 2 mobile games at most. This week's Japanese game release: Shinchan Shiro of Coal Town and Yohani de Parhelion, New Mazu, in the Mirage, and more. So this is several Japanese games coming out. Not really huge names though. We're starting to see less digital releases being listed. It really feels like it's kind of the opposite of reality, that they're listing less digital releases because maybe they're only showing off the ones that are actually launching worldwide or launching specifically in Japan, where we're seeing slightly more physical and digital releases. Desert Day Otomate 2024 announcements roundup. Fuyu Zono Sacrifice, Honey Vibes, Haku Oki, Ibun, Berizinski no Maho, and more. So must have been some special event showing off several games. Looks like mostly visual novel games. Yeah. And that certainly is the danger of just having every single video game company potentially have their own Nintendo Direct presentations. So that we would just be flooded with event names and things being announced at events as if they are a bigger deal than they really are. Wuthering Waves opening movie is available to watch on Gematsu. Let's see. This doesn't look terrible, but these 2 images so far are not showing quite enough. I'm looking for a Steam link. It's in development for PC, iOS, and Android. Apparently it doesn't have a Steam link. Inotria, The Last Song, launches June 21st. Which I guess I have to assume that this is now a launch date, so I guess I'll make another YouTube short around it, even though it's on the fall list. Rumor Switch successor is not slated to launch until Q1 2025 with an update on Gematsu.com. What's the actual update here? Video Game Chronicles updated its story stating it's heard from multiple sources that they recently briefed publishers on an internal delay in launch timing from late 2024 to early 2025. So they definitely seem to have been targeting Christmas, and now they're delaying it to 2025, which I guess maybe they just can't afford to delay it all the way to Christmas 2025, or at least summer of 2025. Cricket Through the Ages for Switch and PC launches March 1st. I think what's happening here is the remainder of these articles are things I already talked about, and so I probably don't need to open tabs about them. But yeah, I imagine my macro just messed up last time, which I vaguely recall it did mess up last time, and so now it's just gonna catch up. So we'll try and burn through the rest of these articles a little bit faster. Rivals 2 adds Clarion and Loxodont. White Day 2, The Flower That Tells Lies Complete Edition is coming to the PS5 and Xbox Series in 2024. Unicorn Overlord details more characters, battle stages, skills, and tactics. Withering Rooms launches April 2nd for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot DLC Goku's Next Journey gameplay is available to look at on Gamatsu. Alan Wake 2 sales have topped 1.3 million. Action-adventure game Waltz and Jam has been announced for PC. Microsoft is bringing 4 games to rival platforms. Diablo 4 coming to Xbox Game Pass on March 28th, and future Xbox hardware teased. Outworld Definitive Edition for Switch launches March 28th. Forever Skies to launch as a PS5 console debut exclusive. No Man's Sky Omega update is now available. Guilt is coming to the Switch on March 14th. The Famitsu sales from the February 5th to February 11th have been updated on Gamatsu. Avatar: The Last Airbender competitive multiplayer fighting game has been announced. Fantasy action adventure game Self-Veloz to be published by Merge Games. Whisker Waters launches April 19th. Morbid: The Lords of Ire launches May 23rd. The physics-based sumo wrestling game Nyanvi launches February 22nd for Switch and PC. The side-scrolling shoot-'em-up game Pop Slinger is coming to the PS4 and 5 and the Xbox One and Series on February 29th. Trip World DX for the PS4 and PS5 are now available. The PlayStation Plus game catalog and classic catalog lineup for February 2024 has been announced. The rhythm platformer Crimson launches March 21st for all consoles and PC. A roguelike deck builder called The World According to Girl is coming to Xbox One and Series and the Switch on February 15th. Outcast: A New Beginning demo is now available. Princess Peach Showtime Transformation Act 2 trailer and screenshots are available on Gamatsu. Ys 10 Nordics is coming to the West this fall for the PS4 and PS5, Switch, and PC. Hookah Haze Adventure Park trailer is available on Gamatsu. Suikoden creator Yoshitaka Murayama has died. DNF Duel DLC character Monk has been announced. Voice Love on Air for PC launches March 14th. And Sony Interactive will not release any new major franchise titles before March 31st, 2025. So that was a pretty good experience there to just kind of burn through all the news fairly quickly there. Didn't cough, didn't run out of breath. We have only about 6 GameDeveloper.com articles left, and then we'll be done for today's stream. Let me take a sip of water first, though. Very often it is the water that messes me up, and I end up choking on the water, coughing. Alright, let's finish here. Report: Nintendo's rumored Switch successor will now launch in 2025. Baldur's Gate 3 and Marvel's Spider-Man 2 big winners at the 27th Annual DICE Awards. There's a report that Blizzard is laying off almost 140 workers in Ireland. Dead Island 2 and GTA 5 led Epic Games Store's top played games in 2023. XZA/UM writers alleges the studio has become a cold, careless company, end quote. And that is straight up just all of the games that, all the news and all the games that we're going to talk about. So that is just going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there's a link down below to Patreon. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.